Hello, and welcome to Top Story Daily Edition. I'm JANA's Editor-in-Chief, Jonathan Todd. Thanks for joining me for a discussion on the most pressing issues in the Jewish world. Please like, subscribe, and give us good reviews when you listen to the show. Now let's get started. You would think that everyone understands that you can't defend the Jews while supporting something set up to help promote antisemitism. Yet apparently, that basic truth is being ignored by those who want to know better. The Jewish Public Affairs Committee of California, JPAC, has put itself in just such an impossible position. The group, which serves as the body tasked with defending the state's Jewish community to the government of the nation's largest state, is stuck in a contradiction. On the one hand, it knows that it should mobilize whatever influence it has to push back against the way California's ethnic studies mandate in the public schools is being used to promote hatred for Israel and anti-Semitism by left-wing activists who dominate the educational establishment, including school boards and teachers' unions. On the other hand, as a group whose liberal politics tie it to the prevailing orthodoxies on the left that produced this problem, it feels equally obligated to defend the ethnic studies mandate despite the way it has been used to attack the Jewish community. JPAC has sought to ameliorate problems created by the passage of the ethnic studies mandate by the California legislature in 2021 and the creation of a model ethnic studies curriculum by the State Board of Education even before that. But all it has done is to make it even harder to accomplish the one goal that ought to be embraced by those who care about defending both the Jews and core American values of liberty and equality, scrapping the entire program. The latest twist in this long-running battle concerns a letter that has been issued by the California Board of Education to the 1,037 school districts around the state that, according to the Ethnic Studies Mandate Law, have the authority to come up with their own curricula to implement. The letter cautions the district that some ethnic studies materials the vendors have circulated discriminate against individuals or communities. It also reminds them that their courses should not reflect bias, bigotry, or discrimination. Well, I should hope not. JPAC can rightly claim credit for using its political influence to force the board to issue the letter with the approval of Governor Gavin Newsom. The problem it is trying to address is real. Much of the material being used in classrooms by radical left-wing groups like the ones promoting liberated ethnic studies in districts such as the city of Los Angeles. These curricula are based in critical race theory and promote anti-Semitism by depicting Jews in Israel as white oppressors. Yet mainstream Jewish groups are still declaring victory. They are acting as if issuing the letter will correct the problematic practices that have cropped up in the last 2 years, as it became clear that the ethnic studies mandate has been, as some foresaw, an opportunity for leftist educators to use these courses to impose a variant of critical race theory in public schools. But they're wrong. The ethnic studies programs in California's schools and those that are being implemented elsewhere in the country do far more harm than good, and not just because activists are trying to hijack them. Courses are the product of an intersectional mindset that inevitably leads to efforts to divide Americans rather than to bring them together. They lend themselves to instructional material that promotes notions about equity rather than equality. The enshrinement of equity, part of the woke DEI catechism of diversity, equity, and inclusion, is a formula for the imposition, quotas, and discrimination in favor of some favored groups at the expense of others. And it is no surprise that Jews are always among the losers in that exchange. Seen in that light, it's clear that the position of the liberals, like those in JPAC, who favor ethnic studies mandate, but then struggle vainly to ensure that they aren't being used as a vehicle for anti-Semites, must acknowledge that this is a contradiction in terms. Even when urging the Board of Education to warn against the use of courses that institutionalize prejudice, JPAC was still advocating for ethnic studies courses, praising the way they deepen students' understanding of American history, but also promote equity and inclusiveness. Some in the Jewish community understand what's going on. The Amcha Initiative, a group that has been fighting this battle for years, denounced the board's letter rather than celebrating it as JPAC did. The group's director, Tammy Rossman Benjamin, correctly said that it was too little too late. She said Newsom was ignoring the way that school districts were adopting curricula that contained anti-Jewish material, and his effort serves to dilute rather than reinforce guardrails against bias, bigotry, and discrimination, and will only confuse school districts about what exactly must be guarded against. This is a throwback to the start of the battle over ethnic studies in California a few years back, when the first drafts for a model ethnic studies curriculum by the State Board of Education were proposed. Those documents sought to make the histories and struggles and contributions of Asian, Black, Latino, and Native American communities an integral part of public education, but they ignored, among others, anything about Jews, Armenians, and Sikhs. Rather than seeking, as they should have, to sink the entire project, JPAC and other liberal mainstream Jewish groups doubled down on ethnic studies while trying to improve it by ensuring that the model mentioned Jews too. Their satisfaction over such petty victories didn't prevent districts like Los Angeles from adopting the liberated version of ethnic studies that is so problematic. Others are fighting back with lawsuits, like the one launched by the public interest firm Deborah Project that targets the anti-Semitic discrimination that is the product of liberated ethnic studies. Similarly, the CAMRA, the media monitoring organization, issued a report demonstrating how the push for ethnic studies is linked to the anti-Semitic BDS movement. Now, it was clear from the start that the problem with ethnic studies went beyond whether or not Jews would be included. But the organized Jewish community, which JPAC represents, is far too concerned with staying in sync with its liberal allies to understand that ethnic studies can't be fixed to make it less anti-Semitic. The claims of their advocates notwithstanding, the goal of all these curricula isn't really to fight racism, as it is to enshrine race consciousness at the heart of every discussion and talk. The Critical Ethnic Studies Association, which was the original driving force behind this program, isn't interested in celebrating diversity and making sure that the stories of minority groups are added to the traditional narrative of American history. What it wants is to replace the old story of America as having been born in a fight for liberty and seeking, despite problems and the sin of slavery and racial discrimination, to progress toward freedom for all, with one that views it as an irredeemably racist nation. The point of the curriculum it inspired, even its revised forms, is not one of inclusion, but one that focuses on indoctrination of all students in the idea of, quote, translating historical lessons and critical race theory into direct action for social justice, unquote. Its purpose is to reinforce a leftist worldview that sees what earlier generations celebrated as the American creed of opportunity, meritocracy, and liberty as merely a dominant narrative that serves white privilege and racism. Hispanic American history is important, as are the stories about Asians, African Americans, and other groups, including Jews. Still, the schools shouldn't be setting in motion a destructive competition among groups in which they each fight to get mention. The emphasis on the racial, religious, and ethnic lines that divide us makes race the primary way we all define ourselves, rather than as individuals and Americans. It glorifies a struggle for equity in which some people will get privilege and power based on their group identity, rather than demanding that all are given an equal chance and be judged on their own merits. This hurts everyone, especially minorities, who are being sold a lie that the basic American values of political and economic freedom won't help them. Sadly, legacy Jewish organizations are so tied to liberal partisanship and bend their knees to fashionable ideas like DEI and ethnic studies that grant a permission slip to anti-Semitism, as opposed to speaking out against them. They lack the courage to cut loose from their traditional allies and point out that the left-wing groups and those who purport to speak for racial minorities are seeking to impose DEI and intersectional ideology on the schools, businesses, and even the government. By accepting inadequate half measures to deal with a toxic ethnic studies problem that can't be solved by anything other than its abolition, the Jewish establishment has once again betrayed their mandate to oppose Jewry. Thanks for listening. Please remember to tune in every day for Top Story Daily Edition and every week for the full hour-long JNS TV program. Whether you're listening to us on Apple, Google Play, Spotify, or any of the other podcast platforms, or on the JNS YouTube channel, please like and or subscribe to Top Story, click on the bell for notifications, and give us good reviews. Please write to us at editor@jns.org and let us know where you listen or watch the show and what you think about it. And remember, keep reading and thinking for yourself.